Welcome to Alan Skorsky Reports. I'm Alan Skorsky. Today's show is going to be a little different than our previous shows, which tend to delve more into politics and the Middle East conflict. Today's guest is a female imam from the Netherlands, Salima El Musalima, who I found in a group chat that forges friendly relations between Arabs and Jews. What I found remarkable about her is that she is not the typical imam that we in America or even in Israel are accustomed to, who have been on record calling for the death to Israel and the Jews. Imam Salima has a very different story to tell, and as a Sufi Muslim, the original Islam has a very different interpretation of the Quran, which she says supports Israel as the Jewish homeland. As a brief introduction, Salima El Musalima is the first woman to serve as an imam in the Netherlands. She is a Sufi artist who makes avant-garde Islamic art. In her creative work, she seeks Allah. Imam Salima El Musalima, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, so again, first of all, I've never met anyone like you before. I became a little familiar with your work through our group chats and through Google. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, you are a Sufi Muslim. Now, for most of us in the West, we are used to the Shiites, the Sunnis, the Wahhabis. More, I'll say, violent expressions of Islam. You are a Sufi Muslim. You have a very different outlook, a very different interpretation. So I know in one of your speeches, you talked about your interpretation of the Quran is the original interpretation, not what we in the West are used to, and then how also you say that in the Quran, it actually supports Israel as the Jewish homeland. So if you would please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan. I'm actually a very traditional Muslim. Traditional Islam is very inclusive. Up until the 15th century in the Middle East, what is now known as the Middle East, there was a majority of Christians up until the 15th century. So you can understand it was a very cosmopolitan society with a lot of different religions, and Islam was not the dominant religion as we know now in the 20th century. I come from Morocco. Morocco has a very long history, and in that long history, Judaism was a very essential part of it. You cannot think of Moroccan culture without including the Jewish culture. Morocco has an Islamic and Jewish culture, and that's the culture that I grew up in. And Morocco is very unique because in Morocco, it's founded by the Idrisids. And the Idrisids are the direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. And from that time on, from the Idrisis until now, Morocco has been continuously ruled by Idrisis, descendants of the Prophet. And a foundational part of our faith and religion is Sufi Islam. I'm at this moment wearing a prayer necklace. There are a lot of Muslims that use this prayer necklace, especially the older generation. Well, this is a Sufi prayer necklace. You do dhikr on it. So every time you remind the name of God, it's dhikr, it's remembrance of God. This is a Sufi element. Other kind of versions of Islam don't have it. It's Sufi. So you can see that throughout the Middle East, Sufism has been the basis of the religion of Islam. Everything that has to do with culture and music and dance and Islam combined together, it's Sufi expression. So I'm an artist and an imam, and I combine these two. I combine my traditional Sufism with modern day art. And yeah, I feel very grounded in my faith. It's not a foreign faith, it's not political, it's very spiritual. And you asked me about the Quran being actually, if you read it literally, if you take it with you and you read it literally, you can interpret it as a very Zionist book. For example, Surah Al-Isra 17.104. And we said after the Pharaoh to the children of Israel, dwell in the land, and when the promise of the hereafter comes to pass, we shall bring you forth in a mixed crowd. this very verse is like a direct call upon the Jews, the children of Israel, to dwell in the land. And any Muslim that says it's not written there is lying, because it's literally the word of God in the Quran. But here comes like the interpretation. Sadly, this has been interpreted by conservative Muslims as in the tafsir, which is the traditional explanation, they interpret it as the end of times, and they do not interpret it in the way it is literally written. And as a Sufi Muslim myself, I cannot just try to make it different than what is written. I read this and I take it to heart. So, although I don't see myself as a political Zionist, I do see myself as an Islamic Zionist. And I think all Muslims are Zionists if they are really honest about what they're reading. So, this is something that needs to be discussed about within the Muslim community. We don't have to be political Zionists, which is very, at this moment, very charged, but we can think about it spiritually, which is what I do.
Right. Now, also one thing I noticed, because you are a female imam, and I heard in one of your speeches or addresses that there are other, throughout Europe, there are other female imams. So where does that come from? Because again, I know, like, when it comes to Orthodox Jews with rabbis, we have male rabbis, and now there's kind of a move in certain circles to acknowledge, in some level, a female rabbi with certain, you know, I guess, rights that are given to them to act in a rabbinical way. So, if you would, tell us a little bit about the female imam, how that's viewed in Islam, and how many you have, and your role, in the faith.
Well, very recently, we had our very first female imam conference in Europe, in Brussels. And there are currently a growing group of female imams. We're everywhere. We're in Germany, we are in Italy, we are in France. There are multiple imams in Morocco. Morocco has given it a different name. They are called mordighats. They do everything except give the sermon. So they do all the things that imams do except give the Friday sermon. But they have given sermons as well, because the Moroccan king has been present with a female imam as she was giving a sermon to the crowd of very important people in Morocco. So this is the level that Morocco is bringing. Morocco is acknowledging that female imams have not had like a precedent in the past, but they're using it in the present, because they see that in the time that we are in now, female imams are important and should get their places. At the same time, within Sufism, women have always played prominent roles. We have, for example, holy places, places where there are like prophets or people that are buried that have been very important. Usually, the ones protecting those places are women. And they have a comparable role for the women community in Morocco, as do the imams with the men. Traditionally, women on Friday went to the Sufi female leader in the marabout. We call it marabout. It's usually in places where there are buried people. And then the women come there and they talk about their problems and they fix their problem and they cook and do all kinds of fun things. The men, on the other hand, they went to the traditional places and they just talk about religion in a more abstract way. So, female leaders have always existed within a Muslim context, but we didn't give ourselves the name female imams. Here in the Netherlands, I found out that I have to give myself a new title, like female imam, to be taken seriously by Western people. Although, if I just tell them I am a Sufi priestess, they would not take it seriously. So we give ourselves this name to have an equal position as the men. And it's just about the equal position and to be able to talk one on one and not to be seen as second class citizens in the Islamic context.
So in mosques, for example, do you address crowds? Do you address men and women? Or are you relegated more to, we'll call you an imam, but your role will be just to speak with women? Or are you granted I guess, religious authority to address, both men and women?
Sadly, at this moment, there are no official female imams giving sermons in traditional mosques. Usually, we improvise our own mosques. There is an LGBTQ community in Europe that allows female imams, so I have given sermons there, but that's like a minority group. The biggest group are still not really accepting female imams to give sermons, but this is changing. I've been on Moroccan television as a female imam, and they didn't do that with imam that at that day he had he would won a prize, the oldest imam in the Netherlands, and they didn't give him the podium to speak to the Moroccan public, but they gave the podium to me. So I think there is a lot of things are possible, and we should not think inside boxes, but think outside of the box.
And just out of curiosity, and this just came up to me. So again, in the West, we're familiar with the other, Islam. You have Iran, which is Shia. So we know about Shia. We know about Wahhabism because of Saudi Arabia, and Sunnis because of Osama bin Laden. What percentage of Islam is Sufi?
I think if you're really honest, it's like 100%.
Okay, but we're
Because
not honest. So what the world how the world because there are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. And again, a lot of them don't speak like you or have your attitude. So let's say based on what perception is, not it's like saying that all Jews are pro-Israel because Israel is in in our soul and our neshama. It's not, unfortunately. So from those of you who practice, who identify, what percentage would you think?
well, if I speak from the Moroccan context, I would say that all the imams are Sufi because there are Sufi celebrations that are held and they are paid by the Moroccan government. So they are preaching the
Right.
Sufi traditional Islam. I don't know about other countries, but I do know about Morocco. Shia Muslims were actually Sufi as well. Morocco originally was a Shia country before Iran became Shia. So I think the Shia of the Iranian is a very perverted kind of Shiaism. It's politicized and radicalized. Originally, Shia religion was actually very Sufi in origin.
Interesting. Okay, something else that I found very interesting. Again, researching a lot of your work, that you have come to have an admiration for the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who is a very revered rabbi um, in Judaism, and even of those Hasidic sects or those who don't follow the Lubavitch, doctrine or Hasidus, there's still tremendous admiration because of who he is and what he represents. So for
Yes.
Jews, that's one thing, but to have read that you yourself, as a Sufi Muslim, as an artist, have come to grow from him, I'd love to hear more about, how that came to be.
It actually started very naturally. I think it started 4 years ago. The Lubavitcher Rebbe just popped out somehow. I saw a video of him and blessing people, and somehow I deeply connected with him on a Sufi loving level. And I recognized that he's a holy man. I'm not saying that he's the Moshiach, but I recognize that he's a holy man, and I felt it. You cannot just describe when you feel in love, when you are in love with someone, you feel this love. You cannot describe where it comes from. And I just,
Everyone says that. They say that when you meet him, you sense it. But go ahead, I didn't want to interrupt you.
I felt it. I
Yeah.
sensed, I could not lie to myself. I
Yeah.
felt love. So suddenly he appeared in my stories. I'm also a storyteller. I'm in the tradition of the Thousand and One Nights, where women tell stories to explain situations. And I started making him an object in my stories. Um, and I started writing and started making him a prominent figure and make him discuss modern issues. And yeah, that's how it started. He's an important Sufi holy man for me. And the Sufis, they are inclusive. You know, we allow holy people from other religions. For example, in Morocco, we have Lella Sulika, who died a martyr, a Jewish that died a martyr, and she's admired by Muslims and non-Muslims. And there is a holy man in Wujda, which is my patron saint. And the holy man in Wujda, the Muslims call him Sidi Yahya. The Jews call him, they come there also. They say that he's a rabbi, a very admired rabbi that was buried there. And the
Right.
Christians say it's John the Baptist that's buried there. So three religions come there to pay their homage. And this is a tradition that I come from. It's inclusive. So the rabbi is also a holy man for me, and I definitely take him very seriously.
So it's interesting because again, you mentioned a few times about Morocco. So Morocco is one of those Muslim countries that has always had pretty good relations with Israel and with the Jewish people. On Passover, there are programs that go to Morocco. So, there's always been a very respectful and cordial relationship between the king. Was it King Hassan, if I'm not mistaken, from Morocco?
That was the previous king. He had a very good relations.
Yeah,
All the kings of Morocco have a good relation. Currently, we have his son,
right.
which is King Mohammed the fifth.
Okay, wow, that's very interesting. So, let me ask you another question. You've again, you're in this chat group that I found you in, where that promotes relation between Arabs and Jews. Have you yourself? I know you've spoken before Jewish audiences before, but have you had connections with people in Israel, with leaders in Israel, trying to work with them to bridge some of the differences?
I have actually one very good friend in Israel. She's a unique personality. She is what we call today a settler from the West Bank, and she's also a Sufi. And we have been talking to each other throughout this whole process of 7th October until now, the war with Gaza and Iran and all of that. So she has given me a very deep understanding of the situation that currently the Israeli people are in. And I have a lot of empathy and love for her. And she's so loving. She's actually, I think, one of my best friends. I have not met her yet, but I hope to meet her soon. Um, yeah, what can I say? I think there are a lot of misunderstandings between Muslims and Jews at this moment. Sadly, the news is not giving us good examples of how our relationships should be. But I feel so much love for her, and I hope to be of meaning for her, to help her in any way possible that I can find.
So again, I know that you're not political, but I know the news keeps changing now around the West and around the Middle East that now these sheikhs from Hebron have come forth and said that they don't want anything more to do with the Palestinian Authority. We recognize you, but again, that's more political. I don't know if you have any opinion of that because you come from a more spiritual side, but do you see that as something that's advancing where you come from as well, or is that something that's more political and nothing to do with, how you view things, in your through your lens?
Well, if you look at the Abraham Accords, which is definitely an accord that has been set up by Donald Trump, let's give him the applause for that. And Donald Trump, from an Arabic perspective, he's a sheikh. And what did he do? He went to other Arab sheikhs and he went and talked to them in the normal way, not the political way, but just normally talking to them. Let's fix this, as a businessman would. And you can see it happened. It happened, and people were ready to connect with Israel. Morocco was ready. We had such a long history that we need to catch up with a lot of things. Israel has very big Moroccan community, which is very much connected with the Moroccan traditions, with the Moroccan spirituality, with the Moroccan culture. So we are very happy that this is starting. So to get back to the Palestinians, I think this should have happened like 2000 years ago. I'm surprised that only now the sheikhs are being approached. I think they should have been approached in the first place before talking to people like Yasser Arafat and others. The sheikhs are the most important leaders. And I can talk from my own Moroccan context, is that my great grandfather, he was a sheikh himself. and he had Jewish people living in his house. That was very normal because the Jewish traders went from city to city to sell their things. And usually, when they stopped, there were no hotels in the wild west of Morocco. So they stayed with the sheikhs in their own homes. So this was never very normal. You know, it's very normal to approach the sheikh, to make the sheikh important because it's a matter of honor. Sheikhs are there forever. Politicians, they come and go. Politicians are not always honest. A sheikh has to be honest. He has to keep his word. So I think the sheikh is the best thing Israel has been doing now in a long time.
Okay, now let me ask you the big question, the one that you've been waiting for. You are an artist, and artists have a very different worldview. They see things. If you know, there could be a spot on a wall. If you ask me what that is, I'll say that's a spot on the wall. You ask an artist what it is, and they'll give you a whole long dissertation that it represents the universe. And I'm like, okay, I just saw a dot there. So you are not only an artist, but you're an avant-garde artist, and you're a spiritual artist, and you are a person who uses art to get closer to God, or in Islam, Allah, which again is God for all of us. So if you would now tell us again about who you are and how you work and how your artistry has taken you to God and brought you to the place that you are today, where you are this, I guess, peacemaker or a believer in peace between all.
Thank you, Alan. Well, I'm an artist. I'm a Muslim artist, so I make Islamic art in the tradition of the Thousand and One Nights, one can say. Sadly, we are now in a time where art has become political, and you can see that there are a lot of leftists, specifically, I'm calling it leftist art, but I don't think they're really leftists. But let's call it leftist art. And one prominent artist in the Netherlands, she started making like art with Netanyahu as Hitler, and she was promoting that. And I thought to myself, this is one of the most famous artists at this moment. You know, she's very prominent in the media, and this is the story that she's telling about a very complex situation, just saying that he's Hitler. So I think I don't believe in that kind of leftist art. I really went very deep into mystical Islam. I processed everything from the beginning of the war, like when it started on 7th of October until now. And I went into a mystical journey, which for your maybe watchers is an unknown territory, but I can say it's kind of surrealistic reality. It's not truth from an objective way, but truth from a subjective way. You can say it's like Jungian inspired art. And I found out eventually that that I am the problem, that not Israel or Hamas is the problem, that I am the problem. And this was for me very confrontational. I became depressed because I saw the victims. Usually, when people see victims, like the Israelis saw the 7th of October victims, and they say, well, Hamas, the Palestinians, they are the evil. They are the ones we need to address. And the other side says, well, look at Gaza. It's all bombed down, and the Israelis did this. They are the evil. That's what the Palestinian protesters think. But I found out that I am the problem. I am the problem. And by giving myself the task to be the problem, I gave myself also the task to be the solution. When you make the other the problem, you make them the solution. You give away your power. And I got my power back by seeing that I was the problem. And
explain that. Because no, people are going to see you and they're going to say, wait a second, how are you the problem? You're not the one who invaded. You're not the one calling for our destruction. So if you would explain that a little bit, how you came to put this on your shoulders.
Well, I have to be very honest. When 7th of October happened, I started waving the Israeli flag for 1 month. I was very, very promoting my Jewish friends, my Jewish people. I was calling up the rabbis. I was calling up all the Israeli institutions, telling them that I'm in solidarity with them. And I was shocked that Muslim leaders were saying nothing about it. They were just saying, well, it's the fault of the occupation. That's why this happened. And it lacked humanity. And I was very adamant to speak out against what happened in Israel. This was horrible. it was a Holocaust attack for me, and when I saw that, and I was very depressed by the images that I saw, and I was disgusted by the Muslims that didn't speak up. But then later on, I noticed that the Gaza war was escalating, and I really went out to see the images coming from Gaza, and I saw so many dead children, so many, and I looked at my Jewish friend, and they were still complaining about the 7th of October. They didn't share their empathy towards the children in Gaza who have no blame. And so then I was very disappointed in the Jewish community and also very angry about it. And but I couldn't address it because I saw that it was sensitive topic. I couldn't tell them this. So I had to do something with my emotion. I felt like demonstrating. Well, I don't know if I should demonstrate or not. I prayed to Allah to give me guidance. I started praying to Allah like at night every day, to asking for Allah to give me guidance. And eventually, the guidance that came to me was that I met my inner settler Shlomo. Um, Settler Shlomo is my inner radical Zionist. And I started having conversation with him in stories that I wrote. The stories just came. I don't know where they came, but they just came. And I started writing and talking very angrily to him and telling, what are you doing and why are you doing this? And Settler Shlomo is a Moroccan Israeli guy, and he was tough, he was cool, he was nice, he was super, super wise. And I couldn't understand how he could be the cause of all of this. And he was very patient with me because he was my soulmate. He was very, very patient with me. And every time I was angry with him and discussing with him, at the end of 3-page stories that I wrote, at the end he won. He won the debate. Every time I was angry, he won. He told me, you're very angry about Israel. What about Sudan? Sudan is there is a genocide in Sudan. There is hunger in Sudan. Why haven't you ever written about Sudan? Sudan, the radicals are supported by the United Emirates, a Muslim country. Why are you such a hypocrite? He didn't say it in this tough words, but I felt a hypocrite myself because he was very honorable and very, very straight and objective. I felt a hypocrite because I never addressed Sudan. And he said, well, I don't believe you are an anti-Semite, but why didn't you address Sudan? And then I discovered the hypocrisy that I was having and others were having, that we're not looking at this objectively. And at the end, I said, okay, Hamas is the fault of everything. Israel's not the problem. Hamas is the problem. And then God gave me, I think I interpret it as God giving me the opportunity to talk to my inner Hamas fighter. And I said, you are the cause of all of this. You did this. And why did you do that? And he was referring to law, international law. And he's saying, I am allowed to resist occupation. I am allowed to. He had the same arguments that sorry for this.
It's okay.
Thank you. He had the same arguments as Settler Shlomo. And he was also a great guy. He told me, how do you think I can earn a living? He said, if I don't work for Hamas, I will not be able to support my family. This is for me the way to go ahead. This is for me life. You are judging me, but you don't know my situation. So eventually, when I found out that both of my opposites were actually great guys, I came into a very existential crisis, and I became very, very, very sad. And the only way for me out of the sadness was to accept God's grace and wisdom and to just call for help. And what I could do is to try to tell my story and to try to be a messenger of peace and a messenger of love, not from a political standpoint, but from a Muslim standpoint. And to tell everybody, like, wake up, your brothers. You are all good people, It's just a complex situation. Let's sit together and talk about this. Let's not blame each other, but try to talk about this. Try to hug each other. I know this is horrible, what is happening. I know the deaths on all sides is horrible, and revenge is the most natural thing to do. But for me, I learned that the divine path is the path of understanding, not the path of revenge. And then we go back to Sufi Islam, because Sufi Islam teaches us that there are animalistic sides to us, and that will give us urges to react in anger. But Sufi Islam, Islam itself teaches us that we should not react in anger, but call upon Allah to give us His light. And there is a surah in the Quran, Surah An-Nur, the verse of the light, which is talking about this light, that we need to allow God's light and wisdom to guide us, and not to react as with our animalistic, very natural responses.
Okay, so in conclusion, because you said that you put the blame on yourself.
Yes.
Have you, does this now, are you reconciled now that because you put on yourself that the solution is there? How do you, like, what is next for you? Or is it, okay, I've put this to rest, it's on me, Allah will help me, it's over?
Well, I did the great jihad, which is what the story that I told you, that I addressed all my sides. That
Right.
is called within Islam. This is the great jihad. Every Muslim is called upon to do the great jihad. The great jihad is the core of Sufism. This is the core. After doing the great jihad, Muslims are called upon to do the small jihad, which is what I'm now doing, talking to you. I have another Jewish friend from Amsterdam. She just called me. She said, we need to talk. This is the small jihad, activism. But the small jihad within Islamic context has to follow the big jihad. It doesn't start with the small jihad. It starts with the big one. Because
And
you
we
need to
understand that
guide
because
it.
remember, in America, in the West, and in Israel, jihad has a very different meaning than the way you're describing it now.
I know. That's because of Palestine, and Palestine, especially Arafat,
Yeah.
he destroyed the word the jihad. The Muslim Brotherhood destroyed the word jihad by saying it's okay to kill children and women, which is not allowed in traditional Islam. It's forbidden to kill women. Even modern day warfare is forbidden in Islam, because modern day warfare attacks civilians. That's not how Islam tells us to fight. You fight between warriors. And if your counterpart says, I want peace, you have to accept the peace. So if Israel says to a Muslim nation, I want to be with peace with you, the Muslim nation has to accept, which is what is now happening in the Abraham Accords. They are accepting the peace process.
Imam Salima El Musalima, it's been an honor and a pleasure to meet you. I thank you so much for joining us and offering a perspective that we never hear. What is, as we close out now, what is the next thing for you?
The next thing for me is to pray to Allah, because I know nothing and Allah knows everything. And that's how I live my life. I live my life not knowing, but trying to be guided by God.
Okay. Imam, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to following your work and speaking with you later. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.